Hello and welcome. I'm Kate.
And I'm Emily, and this is Beyond the Neurotype,
A podcast that explores what it's like to be human affirming, regardless of labels, considerate of every person's individual needs, and allowing us to, ideally, understand what is behind every individual's actions, choices, and needs.
We do this with curiosity and love as we explore these individual and unique experiences that are rich with challenges, growth, and grace.
I'm Kate, a mental health social worker and synergetic play therapist. I'm the co-founder of the Village Therapy Hub. I'm a mum to 2 adolescents, and I love understanding and exploring what is happening beneath the surface for children and adults, and what behaviours are communicating to us. But let me keep it real. Much like yours, my life is a roller coaster. So I also understand the complexities of being a carer, the challenges of the day-to-day, and I won't pretend it's all enjoyable.
I'm Emily, a neurodivergent mum to a beautiful autistic girl and wife to a wonderful autistic man. I'm passionate about celebrating neurodiversity and creating a community where people are seen, held, and loved for who they truly are. It is my hope that as you listen to the stories of our beautiful guests, you feel inspired, validated, and supported in your journey.
This podcast is recorded on the land of the Dja Dja Wurrung people. We offer our heartfelt gratitude to the traditional custodians and elders, past, present, and emerging, for continued opportunities to learn, reflect, and grow. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Emily.
Hey, Kate.
We're here to chat about the amazing conversation we had last week with Millie Carr, Unmasking Education.
What a chat. So much information in that episode and so much passion from Millie. You can really just, the way she talks, she's just so passionate about this subject and knowledgeable, and loved our chat.
We're so lucky in our community now to have all of these lived experience folk who bring so much knowledge. You know, they've gone and they've trained as a teacher or a social worker or an OT or a speech, and then they also now feel able to bring their lived experience to the table. And that combination of those two things is just so powerful.
I was thinking that too, that it really highlights the importance of lived experience when with professionals in the neurodivergent space, because who better to make sure it is neuroaffirming, to use that term, and safe for neurodivergent folks than neurodivergent folks themselves, and to know intuitively what neurodivergent people need, because these are people that are neurodivergent themselves or are parents to neurodivergent children that live that life every day. And the difference in how that feels as a non-educator accessing education for my own neurodivergent child, just the difference that brings of that real core knowledge and understanding. How the difference in how that feels as a parent when to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, and I think that's not to say that the professionals out there who don't have lived experience don't also have a lot to offer. But what I really encourage for them is to learn from the lived experience providers. They have so much extra layers to share and teach, and I think what it comes down to is that we're all always learning, and even the lived experience therapists and allied health out there are still always learning as well, and still have different pieces that they're figuring out in their own world that impact the practice and the services that they offer. So I think, like for me, the end of the day, it just comes down to we're all doing the best we can with what we know right now. But when we know better, we do better. And we're always learning. You will never reach a point where you know it all, no matter who you are.
Yeah. I read something this morning. Again, Emily's saying something on the podcast without fact checking, but that even autism wasn't in the DSM until 1980.
Yes, yes. I read that yesterday, and I was going to say that to you today as well on this recording. And
We're
so,
obviously got the same feed.
we must, our algorithms align. I was thinking about that in terms of when people say, back in my day, autism wasn't a thing. Back in my day, there weren't all these people that were diagnosed. If it didn't exist in the DSM-4 until 1980, you bet your bottom dollar that it didn't become just an immediate thing that people got diagnosed and suddenly there was this onslaught of it. Like, it would have slowly become, officially diagnosed for people. And it would have taken another 10 years for there to actually feel like people knew what it was. So it's, of course, there weren't, like in my parents' day, in the 80s, I was born. So in my parents' day, of course, there weren't people that had diagnoses because it didn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, so things are always changing and understanding's always shifting, and we find, more nuance or more detail, and
It's probably a good reminder too that just because something isn't in the DSM-4 doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, because clearly autism existed before 1980. And I think of something like PDA that's currently not in the DSM, whatever number we're up to now. And so that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because it will be. It'll come out in a DSM in future revisions, because they revise it however often they revise it and add things in. It will be in the DSM in the future, but it isn't in there now. And we do significant harm by suggesting that it doesn't exist just because it's not in a manual.
Yeah, I think we must have read the same post, because that was what this was in relation to, that I read, was about PDA, and and it doesn't mean that we dismiss something just because it's not in the DSM, that then it doesn't exist. It's an experience, and again, back to that lived experience, like it's an experience lived by many people. So just because something's on paper, the way that we do things, or the way that, it's been laid out before, listening to lived experience. And I just love that Millie really brought that to the table, and was willing to share like her growth through her teaching journey. And I used to do this, and I used to be focused on behavior, and now this is what I do. And I suppose there wasn't that defensiveness around her practice, so that the defensiveness is like the enemy of growth. You can't grow and improve with defensiveness.
Like the brick wall in the path, you've got to knock it down to be able to keep walking the path. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that is one of the challenges that exists in systems, that the system needs to defend itself for existing in the way it does. And it does that because it has a little bit of uncertainty, that it's not, because when we feel really comfortable and really good about what we're doing, we feel no need to defend it, because we just believe in it, and the believing in it and knowingness that we feel is enough. And when there's a little question of like, is this actually okay? Maybe I'm wrong. Then defensiveness comes up, because we need to fake it till we make it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when we look at, I even am thinking of Mim from season 1 and her episode of how, school was really challenging for her, but then she learnt to mask, and she learnt to fit in and do everything she could to be what the system needed her to be. And then she became a teacher, and then, she was in that system and doing whatever she needed to do until it like just fundamentally broke her and it all fell apart. But I think um, maybe this system isn't working for a lot of these teachers as well, and it's just that this is how it is. You've got to suck it up because they have to suck it up and survive it. And actually the idea that the system can change or things can move and flex is like um too shocking to even consider because they didn't get those accommodations. Or do you see where I'm going, kind of
Yeah,
rambling with
I
that?
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was just thinking as you were talking about how the system, the schools or the education settings that do it in a really radically different way, that don't follow like the set system, are called alternative.
Mm.
It's like we have the system and then we have the alternative to that. And the alternative is like rogue and does something right off the book. And like you've got to be able to feel okay with the fact that you're in an alternative environment. And that's not taking away. There are some schools in the mainstream system that do it really well. Millie School is obviously an example of that. And I
Mm.
think it's fantastic if you are listening to this and you have found a school that you feel really supported by and that are walking the talk, because I think that's something I hear from families a lot, is they know all the things to say, but they don't actually know how to put it into practice. And so I think there's different levels of schools. I think there's schools that do it really beautifully and walk the talk and really push as hard as they can against the structure that they are in within without being alternative while being mainstream. And then there's schools that are starting to be able to talk about it and understand it and see it, but they haven't quite figured out how to put it into action yet, or they can do it in little pieces, but not too broadly. And then there's schools that are so overwhelmed by the even concept that they would need to change what they've been doing for all of this time that they are just defensive immediately. And I think all of those exist, but I think it's really interesting that to not exist in the mainstream, we have to go to alternative.
Yeah. And yeah, Millie's school, like that sounds like they've got I think she said they've got an OT on staff,
Yeah, and speech and
speech.
psychologists. Yeah.
Yeah, which yeah, is great. Because one of the, kind of frustrations I've had is that I'm using all of my child's NDIS funding to bring in professionals to work with a school that really probably should already have an understanding. I feel like, and obviously, there'll be certain points to finesse about a particular child, but it's, I suppose, yeah, sometimes I have felt like going in that I'm really kind of paying out of NDIS's pocket and my child's money that's meant to benefit her life to educate kind of from the ground up. And um, yeah, I'd love to see more of that, just more professionals in schools. And I think it creates that collaborative environment too, that there are multiple professionals kind of equally invested. And yes, it's the teacher's classroom and all of that. But yeah, I think it just creates more space for that collaborative environment to begin with.
Well, I think so because I think that it increases the relationship.
Mm.
And so it shifts that piece of like, I don't really know you and you're coming in and making suggestions and you don't really know me.
Yeah.
So it allows for relationships to be built. I love working in schools and I worked in a school for many, many years recently. And what I loved about that was that I got the opportunity to spend time in the environment. I got to really see how the school worked. I was available if teachers wanted to just jump in and ask a question in break times. I could see the teachers. I'd pick up the kid from the classroom and the teacher would know who I am and have a moment to ask me a question or to collaborate and problem solve. And I think that was really valuable. And I
Mm.
really think that being able to exist in any school is really important. But I've also experienced the complete opposite where I have offered to come in and run the same clinic in another school in an area that I know is remote and doesn't get a lot of services. And the principal said no thank you, that they didn't want anything like that offered in their school. So again, it comes down to how able the school community are to see the value in it.
Mm. Yeah.
And post COVID, the government actually provided a bucket of money for schools to use. And the idea was that they would bring in OTs and speech and employ those people in their school so that the children could get extra support, because we can see that COVID's had an impact significantly on kids and that they've got a lot more challenges coming into the schools now. So it's been interesting also to see how schools have used that money, because they were given the money with like an idea about it'd be great to support kids' mental health and to be able to support the way that you offer things in the school. But that was really all the guidelines were. So schools have been able to use it in whatever the way they like.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that.
It's why most schools now also have like the first lot of funding came through and people got like a disability inclusion teacher or staff person on staff that was given that role. And now some schools are also rolling out as an extension of that, another specifically mental health teacher or more of a well-being teacher who does that role full time and doesn't do a classroom job as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not that there's not things changing, and I totally believe that the government can see that there's a need and they're putting in tiny little bits. It's just whether schools are able to receive it, how they're able to receive it, and then what that looks like and how slow that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose it's a big machine to turn, and so change, to trickle down from a government level into then, leadership of areas and then down into principals and all of that. Yeah, I can totally see why it takes time. It's just hard when the time is your child's childhood.
That's exactly right. When you know that this won't change. And that's been my experience as, my kids are now teenagers, and I have known for their whole schooling journey that nothing was going to change in the system to support them. And yes, we've gone to alternative for my daughter, and yes, that in a lot of ways is really, really great. And the alternative system is really supportive, but it's too late for her. The damage was already done. And it's really hard for kids to come back from that damage. It's trauma. And it requires a whole lot of undoing, and there just aren't always enough years or enough time or enough availability for the right people.
Yeah, really, school is a topic that really, and we talk about it a lot, and but it really puts a fire in my belly of like, even though primary school's nearly over for us, any investment of energy or advocacy or anything I make is not going to be for my child anymore. It's going to be for someone else's. But I really, really, just would. I don't want anyone else to go through what we've been through. And so, we're now looking at high school, and that's where I suppose my next bit of, I suppose my vision is kind of focused on at the moment for my family, but yeah, for school in general, I just, it's not that I'm particularly trying to be like a difficult or antagonistic parent or like I've got to be in my bonnet or something. It's because this stuff actually has a huge impact on lives and mental health. And I get so excited when I see people like Millie that are, in a leadership position in their school, teaching others about neurodivergence and helping coach others through it with that lived experience, that passion for collaboration and the best outcome for the kids. It makes me really excited.
Yeah. And I think like it would be fair to say we're seeing more and more of the conversations and more of the shifts happening in primary school. I
Mm.
think that's where it's starting. And if things are going to change, that's probably the place they're going to change first. I would be tempted to say that secondary schools are still a long way behind in terms of their capacity to really work with neurodivergence and with divergent needs in the school. I think they suggest they're doing that through offering lots of flexibility in learning style and lots of um, accommodations. But a lot of that stuff has to be asked for or specifically identified rather than
Mm.
it just being on offer. Like I think they do allow for multiple ways of learning to an extent, but again, it's kind of has to be identified.
Mm. And that's where, Millie discussed the universal design for learning, which Penny has brought up, Shani has brought up. So these teachers that are in these spaces of really trying to create the best environment possible for neurodivergence are all bringing up
Mm.
universal design for learning, which is offering a lot of choice as default and to everyone, so that you're not having to ask for the accommodations. So, your child isn't being othered and the only one getting the accommodation, and everyone, can see, oh, this one's getting special treatment or doing something different, and being othered.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
because once they get to secondary school, there's a whole nother layer on that around suddenly developmentally, the most important thing to them is their peers and
Mm.
how they're perceived. And they notice everything about what everyone else is noticing about them. And then you've got this like special accommodations being made or teachers singling you out and saying, oh, and you're going to do it this way or whatever it is. And it becomes even harder for kids to accept and want to take on the supports that they're being offered because they just want to fit in. They just want to fit in and not be noticed.
Yeah, which is where they're supposed to be at too.
Oh,
Like you said,
absolutely.
developmentally, that's what they're biologically wired to think and to need to do. So expecting them to kind of overcome that and still access the accommodation is actually going against child development.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, oh, okay, so you're neurodivergent. So you need to not go through the developmentally appropriate stage of caring what others think. You need to ask for what you need, let us know, accept accommodations, and completely disregard the really important developmental stage that you need to go through in order to move towards your next developmental stage. Like we have to go through them all. We have to experience every single stage. We can't skip one because we needed more accommodations and we're expected to just get on with things.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, it's really, I think, yeah, secondary schools particularly still have a bit of a way to go. And it can be really tricky for some families to find the other options. You know, Millie suggested that if a school wasn't able to meet you where you needed them to be and you've tried everything and nothing's working, then looking for an alternative. But I think it's fair to say that those alternatives aren't available to a lot of families. That if you live
Mm.
rurally or in an area where there's not many options, then perhaps that makes it impossible. Perhaps also it's easier to stay for your child in an environment that doesn't serve them than to go through the change and adaptation of moving to a different school and having to start all over again.
Mm.
Perhaps, you know, cost is an issue. If the alternatives are private, there can be lots of barriers and reasons why people stay in a school environment that isn't serving them. And so
Yeah.
I want to kind of acknowledge that for the people that feel like they're stuck in a school that's not giving their kids what they need but also feel like there's no option on that is a real challenge. That is a real life situation. And there isn't just going to be some magic answer every time. That maybe that school, I talk to families that the school might meet the needs in terms of logistics. It's close to where they live. And so to move to another school would require a lot more challenge in the morning to even get to the kids there on time. Other families, they might have a kid that struggles with staying in the school because their response is a flee response. And so they choose a school that has great fencing. And then they can't move from that school because they can't be sure that a new school isn't going to activate the flight response and they're not going to need great fencing. So they stay in a school that's not working just so they know the kid's contained. All of these things, we make the best choices that we can as parents in the time. And it can mean that we spend our entire primary school years in the same school that's not working, but feeling like there's no options. And that doesn't help the relationship with the school, because often what that does is as time goes on, it becomes trickier.
Yeah, there is a bit of, I mean, I moved schools a lot as a kid. And so the one thing that I had in my mind was I wasn't going to move my daughter's school because I was moved against my will. And so I didn't want to move all these times. And then, so that was kind of my thing, was that I'd find the best school that worked, met our needs and felt like the school that we picked was fine. I had lots of friends that were happy there, and we weren't zoned for it, so I had to apply to go there, which is another barrier to just being able to choose. But I kind of wish I'd had permission to move a lot sooner. Like I thought by moving, because I didn't like moving, that it would be really detrimental to my child, and actually move because I probably stayed somewhere we were really unhappy too long, and I probably should have moved at the end of first term when an incident happened that I was very unhappy with. And but it was during COVID and there were all these other things. So when we decided to move, we moved to a school that I felt was best placed to take care of my daughter, and they were amazing. They had a lot of support. But I felt really guilty because that came with a fairly significant price tag. And we were able to just make it work. I wasn't working and I had to go back to work and give up my studies. So we were able to make that decision. But I suppose it was just running through my head. What about all these other kids at this school? Like, what about, I think it was like $800 in uniform alone when we moved her. Like in a week, I had to come up with, $800 just for the uniform. Like that's an insane barrier to, but, you kind of, I felt so guilty that we could make this decision and we had to sacrifice for it, and all of that wasn't easy for us. I can't just drop $800 like that. But for the kids that can't.
Yeah. And I also think when you said about at the first school in term one, there was an incident, and now on reflection, you feel like you should have left there then. I think that there's a expectation that we work through that when something like that happens, we don't just write everybody off and we don't just run off and change it all, that we give it a chance, that we talk through it, that we give everyone an opportunity to fix it. I think there's some value in that, because I do think that repairing ruptures is really important, and we definitely learn a lot, and there's a lot of growth and really important like mental health stuff that comes when we get to repair a rupture. But sometimes we can't predict what that repair is actually going to look like, and so we give it a chance, and we take the opportunity to provide some growth, it doesn't always, because not everyone knows how to do that. And so it's often only on reflection that we think, oh, it actually wasn't worth staying to repair that, that actually it would have been better to go. But it's the kind of thing we can't know in the moment. And we are conditioned to give it a shot.
Mm.
Our relational being wants to repair ruptures. We want, and get done really, really well. That can actually be really incredible.
Mm.
It's just when it's not done well, it's not incredible. And hindsight's the only way to know.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Um, hmm.
And you're right that when we can provide an alternative, I think providing an alternative that costs a lot of money is the same as providing an alternative like homeschooling
Hmm.
that causes families to cut back on income and live in a way that maybe not be what they planned. I think a lot of these changes that families have to make impact them financially. Well, I know families that their kids attend a mainstream school, it's not going well, homeschooling doesn't feel like an option, but one of the parents actually can't work because they have to be available at the moment's notice to go and pick up the kid or
Mm.
to respond to an issue that's happened. And so that family, and I'm sure there's many, many more of these, don't have the ability to perhaps earn two wages, or one of those parents doesn't get to exist in the world in the way they had imagined that they would when their kids all went to school, because they need to be available to support their child in that way as well. So it all has financial impact, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, there's like I've done 2/3 of a degree that I can't finish. Um, there's the career that I thought I would be working towards that's now completely on pause indefinitely. That I've gone from working full time to then 4 days a week to now 3 days a week. And, so the impact that that has on my super and, just all of that. And, my husband's wonderful and, but he earns more money than me, so he goes to work, and I just see this trajectory of like his career versus my career, and that's out of the best interests of our family, but that's not what I would choose for myself. And yeah, I just, this is the other big kind of piece that I feel really strongly about with schools becoming more neuro-affirming and safe for our children, is the impact on women. Like, and yes, men are impacted too, and there are men that are stay-at-home dads and all of that, but just so broadly, you see the impact on women, on single mums who just are wedged between a rock and a hard place of trying to, juggle all these glass balls and, keep their kid mentally as well as possible, while also putting a roof over their head, and women giving up careers to homeschool because they have to. And yeah, it's not fair. Like, it's just so not fair. And yeah, it makes me really angry. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, I think it's a great soapbox to be on. And I think you're right. As you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that, like, if you're living off one wage, so let's say dad goes to work and mum's at home, there's a reality that exists where dad will have to work greater hours, or he's going to have to seek out a job that pays more. Like, I don't know what the data is, but the capacity for families to exist off one wage is so much less now than it ever was. So he has to go out, or whichever parent is going out to earn, has to go out and earn more money. And they may have to do that by working more hours or by working more than one job. And so they are out of the house more than they ever have been. And so the parent that's left at home, who's not only missing out on creating an existence for themselves outside of the home or earning any super or doing anything to support their own well-being, they're also at home more and more on their own. And the relationships break down because that, one parent just isn't around for the kids. And then there's all this pressure on the time that you do have together has to be so valuable and has to be so like used so specifically. Like there's so much pressure. Yeah,
Yeah.
so much pressure.
And also the parent that's at home is then the default parent. They're the one that's de-escalating the meltdowns. They're the ones that knows their child's preferences and which plate to use and which way to cut their toast and all of these little things that can really, be so triggering for a child that's neurodivergent. Sometimes you've got to know their real innate kind of micro needs, and if they're feeling escalated, the little things going wrong or being off from normal can really throw a spanner in the works. And so, you're the one that has to then be the knower of all the things and the one that they prefer. And so, if you're wanting to go out of an evening and go see your friends or whatever because you can't during the day because your day is all about kind of co-regulating with them, and then they don't want you to leave, and then the person who's out at work is in much poorer place to be able to actually then regulate that child. So there's that as well.
Yeah, it's really valid. And then it becomes really difficult for the parent that's out a lot of the time and the child to have as much of a connection because there's just that perception of lack of safety because of the things like not knowing what plate and not knowing how to cut the toast and not understanding all of the sensory needs and not having the same level of information about how to co-regulate. So that builds a sense of we get our information about safety in our system from all of those things. And so then we can end up in a position where it feels like there's only one parent that's able to do any of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the parent that's been out working all day is going to be tired as well. And the person that's home all day is tired and is like, get me out of the house. But the person working all day then has to come, and they probably need to work harder to understand the kid, what's going on for the kid, because they don't just know all the minutiae of offhand so much. So they've got to really make an invested effort to keep the relationship going. And it's just tough. Like, it's no matter which way, it's just really tough.
It is really tough.
Mm.
Yeah.
I feel like we've taken this on obviously this is really important stuff to talk about. But I did actually love that Millie's chat was so happy and so like practical about steps that teachers can take and options that are available to, like, universal design for learning and things that can be done in a classroom that are actually fairly easy to introduce, that can make a big difference in a child feeling happy and safe at school.
And in the teacher being able to manage all the things, because I actually think at the end of the day, what will change the system is teacher burnout.
Yeah.
And these things that Millie and Shanae and others like them suggest are actually all about supporting the teachers to be able to support these kids.
Yeah.
So as much as it can feel really challenging for teachers, it's, actually their best interests in mind that we're trying to, support as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the teacher burnout and just the crisis of not having teachers that want to teach anymore. There's people that really love children and are passionate about helping children and having an impact on their lives, are leaving the profession in huge numbers. I think that will be, the catalyst.
As a allied health professional who goes into schools and supports kids, I certainly don't think that I know the ins and outs of running a classroom or what is best going to support a child in that environment. What I can offer is what I know about nervous systems, about regulation, about sensory needs, and I can offer that information up as a way to further understand the child and then get curious about how that might actually look in the classroom.
Mm.
The challenge, I think, and this was coming, I was thinking a lot about this when Millie was talking and we were discussing meetings and like the defensiveness that can come up in meetings. What I was thinking about was that what I think gets in my way of being able to do that piece better is that often those meetings are really short. So we might have like half an hour in which there's, going to be, we need to discuss, we're there for an SSG. So we've got to do the goals. We've got to do the classroom feedback. And then we might want an update from everyone that's in the room. And there might be a number of allied health in the room and then the parents. And then we've got to fit in some strategies. And the strategies need to happen in a really like direct way because like I don't have time in that meeting. If I've got like a couple of minute window to provide what I think is really important for that kid, there's not a lot of space for, let me really help you feel like I'm really listening and really interested and really care about what you've got to offer. As much as I really want to do that, I love it when I get to know a teacher or a school community over a long period of time and we can build that and it gets to a place where it feels really like we're all on the same page and we're really all there for the same reason. We don't have to kind of do it seems really wrong to say that we don't have to do all the niceties, but there's a piece of relationship building that gets missed in these SSGs because it's like we've got such a short amount of time. We have to get in and say what's needed. And yes, you might hear from me that I'm really passionate and that I clearly really care about the kid and I'm sitting in the meeting and maybe I'm not loving all over the teacher, but I'm definitely loving all over the kid and believing in them. And you've got to kind of hope that the teacher can see that transfers. But actually, I have a lot of respect for teachers and I think they do an amazing job. And it's really hard to communicate all of that in a short meeting.
Mm. Yeah, I think we have 20 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. How do you, we always go over and say, well, if we're going to go over, just make it 45 or, how do you snapshot all your child's needs and have a conversation in 20 minutes?
And I get why they do it. They've got more and more kids they have to run SSGs for. Schools now will run entire days of SSGs for the term, and they'll block out a week and say, we're going to do them all in these 2 or 3 days in this week of this term. And so I completely get it. And often schools for the kids in those SSGs that have a lot of needs and a lot of complexity can find another meeting outside of that if, that's warranted. But it's really hard to get all these people in the room. And so it's really important when we're all in the room that we can kind of just believe and know that we're all there because we care and we're all there because we want the child to succeed.
Yeah, you've all got the same outcome in mind.
Yeah. And so we may not have the opportunity to get to know A, B, and C in the room. Like I might never get to know the OT on that child's team very well. I might have meetings with them and we might chat and talk through the stuff we need to know about the child. I'm probably never going to know if they have kids, if they have animals, what they like about life. But when we meet, we're holding the child in mind and we both know we have that in common and that drives everything that comes through in that meeting. And I guess probably there's also, because I guess you mentioned in Millie's recording that when allied health meet, it can be a very different experience to when we meet with schools. And I think that's because there's an assumption that everyone in the room knows what they're doing until proven otherwise. So we come in going, you're on the team, you've been chosen for this team. I'm going to assume that you OT, you know more about OT than I do. You speech, you know more about speech than I do. You support worker, you know more about that than I do. And I'm going to want to hear from you and share in your knowledge and learning. I'm not going to be the expert in the room. I'm not the one that knows the most in the room. We all know something that's really valuable. And so we come with an assumption like, prove otherwise. I'll only think that you're a dud if you show me you're a dud.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, it very much, my experience, feels like that, where everyone's just like, okay, this is speech territory, this is OT territory, this is therapist territory, social worker territory, and and the assumption would then be that but I suppose this teacher, I suppose, would feel that the classroom is their territory and they should know, and then having these, I suppose, other people with the input on what they do in that classroom. Would have that, can see where the defensiveness can come from, but they're not
I still relate it to what I said about it's similar to parenting and feeling defensive in the way we parent. I think teachers and parents have a lot in common in regards to what they face and what they experience and what they perceive around expectations. And they not only, we as parents, we have other parents, and maybe we have our family members, and, maybe we have some external sources of what we can see as judgment. And then school teachers have that as well. They will have their boss, and they will have other parents, and they will have the parent of the child. And, I think parents and teachers have a lot in common. I always think that if we could just land in a place where that is really named, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, so true.
So maybe we don't need to keep going on and on and on about this. Our point is made. And this is actually the last episode of our season.
It is.
Which is incredible. We've decided not to do a whole season reflection. We're not really sure if you listeners really love the reflections. Feel free to give us some feedback on that if you'd like to. So we decided not to do another whole season reflection this season. We were reflecting before we came on to record how fast this season has gone for us and how much that indicates how much more comfortable we are. We think season 1, which felt really long, was so much learning, so many challenges, so many times we were cracked open and put back together again, and we just went on this massive therapeutic journey. This season has felt more like the settling of the sand. It's like it doesn't feel quite so unstable under our feet anymore, and we're able to really take in the things we're hearing from our amazing guests and use them in our lives now rather than just feel like completely thrown by them.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we're starting to find our groove a little bit. I would hope that is what people feel as well. But yeah, I've loved this season. Every guest that we've had on have just been amazing. We kicked off with Lisa, and then we've had Penny, Helen, Steph, and now Millie. Such great conversations with some wonderful guests, and we are so grateful to each and every one of them for joining us and putting themselves out there, which I think we're starting to forget, like how vulnerable you can feel when you put yourself out there, because we now do it every week. So so thank you. We do really appreciate that. Coming on can be a bit of it can take a bit of courage.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. We felt that so significantly. Season 1, it was like every week an episode came out, and every week we got just vulnerability hangovers galore. And now that's happening less often. I don't listen to the reflections anymore. That might be helping. But we are starting to feel like, okay, this exists as part of a bigger piece, that one thing I said is not the thing that everyone's going to take and publicly pummel me for. So we absolutely appreciate that our guests don't get that opportunity. They don't get to kind of sink into the comfort. Oh, I don't know if it's comfort, but sink into the comfortable discomfort of doing this regularly. So we love and appreciate them for taking the chance to put something out there that they don't have a lot of control over. We don't, sorry, I've got a frog in my throat today. We don't script or provide questions before people meet with us, and I think that can be really challenging. We like to just let the conversation flow and see where it goes and see what naturally comes up. And so that often leaves our guests at the end with a sense of what the hell just happened. And then a little bit of time can go by before we release the recording. And in that time, they forget what the hell happened. And when it comes out, they're left thinking, I don't know what that's going to be. I have no memory of that moment of time, and now it's out in the world. And so that's a huge piece of confidence that people put in, trust that people put into us. And we're really grateful for that. And in saying that, if there's anyone listening that would like to come on and go on this amazing adventure with us, come on and have a chat about whatever comes to your mind and go on the ride of seeing what comes up and where it takes us, then we'd love to hear from you, because we're always looking for guests, and we've got some great guests coming up for season 3. And just the conversations keep growing and the community keeps growing, and we're really grateful to all of you, because Em and I love getting together and having these chats, and you give us the reason to do it.
Yeah, no, it's really beautiful, the community that's building around it. And yeah, just getting to share wisdom from so many people, and hopefully just bring snippets that help people with something in their lives. That's our hope and our why we do it. And we'd love to chat if you are interested in joining us in season 3. beyondtheneurotype@gmail.com, or flick us a message on Facebook or Instagram, and we'd love to chat. Not sure when season 3 will be launching at this stage. We're going to have a little bit of time off. We'll record some more interviews and come back in the coming months, and some more
unknowns are going to come out.
I was going to say,
what to expect.
Who knows?
Kate might run out of stories eventually. Then we'll have to stop.
No, we'll always have your metaphors, Kate.
All right. Thanks, Em.
Thanks, Kate. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
For more information on today's conversation and guest, head to the links provided in the description. Please like and subscribe to keep up to date with more content, and it helps us out with the algorithm too. Beyond the Neurotype is not a licensed medical or mental health service, and any information or advice given is general in nature. Please seek professional help if anything mentioned in today's episode has raised questions or concerns.